You may be wondering, what do you need to get a simple, uncontested, no-fault divorce in Pennsylvania? Well, first of all, to file your divorce in any state, you have to reside in that state. Now, just moving there doesn't necessarily mean that you're a resident. All states have a residency requirement. Pennsylvania's used to be a year. It's now 6 months. The most famous one is the state of Nevada, where you only have to live 6 weeks to be a resident. So people move out there, live there for 6 weeks, file a divorce. It's not necessarily any easier, but it does put a burden on the person who's not in Nevada to have to deal with the courts out there. So that's why that's done. Anyway, so we have a 6-month requirement here. What does that mean? It actually means being here for every day of the last 6 months. And that means going to bed and getting up here, not just going back and forth from a place in a neighboring state. If you misspell something in a divorce or get a place wrong or a zip code wrong, those are all things that aren't going to matter, and the divorce will be perfectly valid. However, if you file your divorce and have not met the residency requirement, that is a permanent defect. It's called a substantive defect. And if you file your case without having been here and your divorce is granted, it would remain permanently defective. And that's called a jurisdictional defect. And if you were to remarry and someone gets upset, you could find yourself married to 2 people. And that is a felony in all of our states and territories. So make sure you qualify, regardless of where you're living, to file your divorce. Now, all it takes is one of you to have lived in Pennsylvania for the 6 months. And if you want to be my client, but you live elsewhere, like in California, but your spouse has resided here for the past 6 months, you can still be my client, or your spouse can be my client. Of course, if both of you live here, that's fine. One exception to being able to file here when you're physically not here is if one or both of you are in our nation's full-time military service, but have your official home of record in Pennsylvania. In that case, your divorce can be filed here. For example, I had a client whose home of record was Pennsylvania. He was stationed on a submarine, and his wife was stationed on a different submarine. Neither one was even in the continental United States at the time, but we were able to process that divorce based upon the fact that one of them had a military home of record here. So residence being in proper shape is the most important thing to filing a divorce in Pennsylvania. Next thing is you have to have a spouse who's completely available and cooperative throughout the process. This is mainly true for a low-cost, no-fault divorce, the only type that I handle. If at any time your spouse becomes uncooperative and refuses to sign, the divorce cannot go through. And that's regardless of how long you've been separated. Now, after you've been apart for a year, if you file through a full-service law firm and spend thousands of dollars, a divorce based on a 1-year separation, which your spouse does not contest, could go through without your spouse's written consent. But once again, that's a very expensive process, and there's no guarantee because it's very easy for your spouse to contest the case. In fact, your lawyer would have to provide to your spouse a simple 1-page document that your spouse could sign and mail to the court to contest it at no cost without a lawyer. So we have no guaranteed kind of divorce in Pennsylvania or anywhere else in the country, in fact. Now, the last major item is that you have everything resolved, that your finances are straightened out, who's going to keep what by way of money in the bank, or savings account, checking account, who's going to keep real estate, who's going to keep personal property, your furnishings. And if you have children, that should be resolved too. However, one of the nice things about Pennsylvania law is that if you are willing to settle those things later, you can still get a simple, uncontested, no-fault divorce and resolve them later. There are certain issues that must be resolved before the divorce is over, and typically the most important thing is real estate. I bet you thought I was going to say kids. Well, remember, once your divorce is final. You are not husband and wife anymore, but you're still parents. And if there are any changes in the situation regarding the custody, visitation, or support of the kids, the courts are still there as long as the kids are minors. And that means they're 18 years of age or less, or if they're 18 years of age and haven't finished high school, they're still minors. So you have to make sure you are a Pennsylvania resident, you have to have a cooperative spouse, and you have to be able to resolve those issues. If someone says, I'm not going to sign the papers unless I get this or unless I get that, and you guys can't come to a meeting of the minds as to how to resolve that, then you're not going to qualify for a simple, low-cost, no-fault divorce in Pennsylvania.